What up, folks? It's Mikey G here from the Midlife Crisis podcast. I am freaking excited because you know what? Everyone's been talking about Say, and I got my main man, the myth, the legend, Benny here, who has started his own casino project on the blockchain. We're going to have an amazing conversation. Just Midlife and Mikey G updates have some massive announcements coming out in the next couple weeks. Really started picking up. We have 4 podcasts in the last week. We've talked to a plethora of people from all different projects. So I'm really excited to bring some content and drop this massive announcement. It's going to be amazing. But let's get to it, man. Benny, welcome to the Midlife Crisis podcast. How are you doing, brother?
Mikey, thanks for having me, man. Yeah, doing well.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for being here. But as we always do, we like to give you a nice formal little introduction. So thanks for sending me some information. Dude is the founder of Legendary League. That is the name of the company / project on Say. He is a father of 3, husband, and this is what gets me really excited. He loves golf, and I love golf, and I don't think there's anything better than a few things that you can imagine, but watching Tiger Woods smash a 300-yard drive or winning a golf tournament. I love that. And by the way, he's a hockey fan, raised in Capital Territory in DC. Literally, of course, the year that I move across the country, they win the Stanley Cup the next year. But been watching Ovechkin, like I told you, Benny, I had tickets literally to every game from the first year that they got Ovechkin in 2005, and like huge hockey fan as well. So we got that going for each other. But honestly, this is the more exciting thing. Benny's been an entrepreneur for 15 plus years. He's founded multiple different businesses, and that speaks volumes compared to the people that I used to talk to in this space 2 years ago that were, no offense to age here, people, 20 years old, didn't really know much about life, nor ever started a business. You want people like Benny that understand how to run a business, make things profitable. That is who you want leading your project in your Web3 company. It is basically a startup. So we're going to have an amazing conversation, talk about life, love, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what we do here. And then obviously we will get to his project, Web3, Say, all the fun things going on. And finally, he's got 3 years in NFT in the crypto space, so we'll talk about that as well. Did I miss anything, Benny, or did I do you justice?
Oh man, thank you. Yeah, no, I think that'll give us enough content to get rolling here for sure.
All right, fantastic. So here we are. We're already here. World famous midlife crisis question. How did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give me Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. That's how we like to describe it. 1, the beginning. You know, as much as you want to share, would love to figure out what the kind of upbringing of Benny, mindset, mentors, influences that kind of helped mold the way that you think today. 2 would be your professional career. I'm sure we have a ton to talk about with the businesses that you started. And then 3 will be your journey into crypto, what is happening now with your project, and what the future holds. So let's hear it, man. I am super stoked to go. Episode 1. Let's roll, brother.
Yeah. Again, thanks, Mikey. I appreciate that. So, yeah, I'm 41 years old now, and as you said, I think that in this space, there's a lot of younger guys early on, and um, some things probably happened with some of those younger ran projects.
Yeah.
And for us, I think as you had pointed out, that we're not really founding a project here; we're making a business. So I appreciate you noticing that. But yeah, I mean, I grew up playing hockey my whole life, and an athlete and playing different sports, and golf was also a huge influence on my life from a really early age. So, I spent my summers training hockey and playing golf, and then all winter long it was just hockey. And that, still to this day, I play as much hockey as I can to kind of stay in shape. Nobody wants to hit the treadmill these days. So getting on the ice with the buddies and having a beer after is kind of a great way for the exercise still in these days. And of course, everybody still thinks they're going to the NHL, which is great.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So, those were kind of my younger years. We're mostly driven by that. Not a lot of care about school or things like that. I did go to university and got a degree in oil and gas sector. Where I'm from here in Canada, oil and gas is massive in Calgary,
Right.
Alberta. And, a lot of people devoted their lives to that, and that's great. And I just took a different path. I came out of school and I became a landman is what I went to school for. And I never for one day took a job or practiced as a landman. I immediately went into becoming an entrepreneur. And just 1 year out of school, I bought my first restaurant. And that was really my first business.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna have to stop you here, bro. We're already in episode 2, and you only been talking for like a couple minutes. We gotta rewind time. See, this is what you're not gonna be used to. You've probably been on some spaces, and you kind of hurry into the whole Web3 here, but we're like a fine wine here, man. We like the things marinate. We like to get a little deeper. So let's go back to episode 1, childhood
Okay.
year. Talk to me about whether it be your parents, memories, or anything that kind of shaped your mindset. Obviously, you work hard, you can persevere, you've started multiple businesses. That frame of mind came from something. So let's talk about that a little bit. What comes to mind?
Yeah, you know what? I've been asked that question a lot over my life. I don't know where it came from, man. Like my dad is a carpenter and a plumber. My mom was in sales and oil and gas sales. They're both incredibly hardworking people. I think I got my drive and work ethic from them. Like if you're still in bed at 8:30 when I was younger, you're getting a knock on the door. What are you doing? And they're making you feel bad about kind of sleeping in. So grew up with a strong work ethic, but entrepreneur, I don't know where it came from. I think, my uncles and aunts are all fairly successful people and,
Right.
judges and lawyers and things like that, but there's not really a whole lot of entrepreneurship in my bloodline. I think it was just something I naturally wanted to do. I'm a guy who likes to be a leader, and I don't really like to kind of, just be cut by the same cloth as everybody else. And I like to
Right.
take risks. And, so I think it was just a natural path for me to kind of gamble a little on
Right.
running my own businesses and employing people rather than being an employee.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to just say like my dad was a big entrepreneur and I just followed in his footsteps. But to be honest, it was the opposite. I think that, since I've, had a successful, last 15 years as an entrepreneur, my family has started to follow in those footsteps. And my sister and myself just opened up a bakery for her, which will be her first business, so that she's operating
awesome.
that and working her butt off. And
Yeah.
my mom got into real estate now, and she's kind of operating her own business that way. And
Right.
my dad, rather than kind of collecting a paycheck from different carpeting and plumbing companies, started his own business and to kind of be the boss. So
Awesome.
it was almost a reverse for me. I kind of led the way instead of kind of following.
I love that. But you did say 2 key things, I think, and I'm interested. Again, I think, and we talk about this a lot, some of it's just, it can be inherent, right? We bring up Tiger Woods, right? Like Tiger Woods was born good at golf. Like I think excellence, like top, comes from you have a natural knack for something and then you work your ass off, right? Tiger did that because he had the natural knack and then he worked harder than anybody else. That's why he's one of the greatest golfers of all time. So, but the 2 things that you mentioned are products of entrepreneurs, which is, one, you saw through your parents how to work hard, right? And then 2, you mentioned taking risks. So those 2 characteristics and traits, can you expand on those at all? Or was the hard work really just seeing your parents day in and day out, wake up early, go to bed late? And then the risk taking, where might that come from?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes from sports as well, right? So
Yes.
you're a hard worker because your parents are a hard worker. If you grow up on a farm, you're probably not sleeping in past 7 o'clock. Whereas, if you have parents that are lazy, you may be a lazier person. But so the hard work definitely came from them, as I think most people. But it also, as I said, came from athletics, right? So being a hockey player in Canada, a competitive one, it's there's a lot there. You're on the ice every day. You're running hills after. You're trying to compete with the others, and as I'm sure you can imagine, and you probably know as a hockey lover, like the space is incredibly competitive. To
Yeah,
even just make a top team there's a couple hundred guys in your way. So
especially in
not only,
Canada.
yeah. I mean, not only does it make you a hard worker, it kind of makes it tough too, right? Like
Right.
you can't whine about you take a slap shot in the wrist or something. You better just get back to the front of the bench, or the coach is going to put you. It's a little different these days, but back when I was playing hockey, like it was tough, man. Like you were
Yeah,
in those
bro.
corners grinding and I've had my teeth knocked out multiple times, and you're back up for the next shift, and they learn from that to persevere through the struggles, and maybe that carried over into business.
Yeah, dude, that totally makes sense. So what you're also saying is that beautiful smile might be a lot of fake hardware, huh?
There's some fakies, and there's about 7 of them
Nice,
mixed
I
in
love
there.
it. But
Mixed
you
in
make
there.
some really good points. Like people, football, yes, insanely tough sport. People don't last long. People get injured a lot. I think a lot of people, um, I'll just come out and say it. What they're doing is really not natural. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
247 pounds running a 4.240. We can debate how people get there. But on the other hand, but what we were saying is hockey is just an incredibly intense sport. So the discipline, the hard nose, kind of blue collar feel of that totally makes sense. And I think it's interesting that you talked about the reverse, and you thought, inherently not sure how to explain where that entrepreneurship stuff came from, but you actually learned these like very critical skills to be a successful entrepreneurship through sports, through your parents early on in life. So that's really cool to hear. And by far, one of the toughest things I've ever seen. Damn, I forget the guy's name. It was like 2006, 7. It wasn't Semin. It wasn't Ovechkin. One of the other forwards on the team literally got, like you said, hit with a puck in the mouth,
Yeah.
4 teeth knocked out.
Yeah.
Dude got like gum stitched up in between the first and the second period, was back out on the ice just kicking ass. And like that is
It's like a piece of pride for hockey players. Like
right.
we almost like getting our faces cracked open, and then just so you can prove to the other guys that you're not a wimp. So
Right.
it's
Absolutely.
gross. It's really a terrible thing.
So that totally makes sense. Totally makes sense to me. And I think just you sharing those two little tidbits of your upbringing really helps kind of mold that picture of why you're starting to be an entrepreneur.
You're a
Is
great
there anything else?
psychologist, Mike. You're a great shrink. You're just drawing it out of me.
Yes, I've been doing it for years, brother. So I hope I can get a little bit by now. Anything else now that we've had this conversation that pops to mind? And if nothing else pops up, that's totally cool. We can kind of move forward to college years.
No, as I said, it just kind of happened, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to, as I said, I didn't want to punch a clock. I wanted to, be successful, and I think just as a leader, it was just a natural fit to start something on my own.
Right. And I think part of that, like you said, you were playing competitively as well. So there's that competitive edge. And trust me, when I still work for a huge corporation, and it's a very tough environment if you have a competitive edge to like constantly be answering to someone, especially when things are inefficient and you're like, bro, I could do this better in like 10
Yeah,
minutes. Like that's
yeah,
insanely frustrating, right?
100%.
Fortunately, I have also a calm side to me, an empathetic side to me where I can overcome that, but it is not easy by any means. But great insight. Really appreciate those thoughts. Anything in college before you kind of got to your first business? Do as an entrepreneur, I'm always interested in people that go to college and what their thought is of school and college and what you gained from that.
Yeah, I mean, there was great parties, right? So, I mean, as fun as college is for learning, um, if my kids asked me should I go to college, I would probably say no,
Right.
especially in this day and age. I just think that, you know, um, we've heard lots of great people talk about, lots of successful people talk about, just go to work for a company for 4 years instead,
Yeah.
and get a paycheck instead of paying, and grind your way up and learn some trades and learn some things about how to deal with people, and whether your skills is you're a natural guy who can do sales, or you're a natural guy who's a computer guy or whatever. It's just there's just so many better avenues in this day and age. So
Right.
but for me, college was I knew pretty early on that I was not interested in getting into any sort of field that I was studying.
Right.
And we took full advantage of the college experience, me and my buddies. I mean, we started our own fraternity. We we threw weekly parties. We actually got our
Oh
fraternity
boy.
sponsored by a beer company,
Yeah.
and we might have been one of the, in Canada that's not common. So we just reached out and got a sponsorship from a beer company, and the Ragers were great. So for me, college was about learning, about interacting with people, and
Right.
and having fun. So
Yeah.
it was good to sneak through and get a piece of paper at the end. But I knew pretty early on that it wasn't going to be something I was going to pursue long term.
Right. And I think you bring up the biggest aspect. I went to Penn State, which is a massive school, right? And it's the same thing. The one thing you cannot replicate, even in just going to get a job, is there's just a special, especially if you go to big school, a social experience that is
Yeah.
next to none, and the contacts and the network that you meet just through that, because it is a lot more all walks of life, opposed to if you go to work for a company, you're all at the same company. There is something to be said for that, but is it worth $300,000? I don't think so.
Like in
But
the state, you guys are crazy in the States, man. I like some of the things I read. I'm like, it's not like that in Canada. I mean, there's some
right,
schools and stuff that have, but I mean, the experience is elevated there. But geez, the price and the loans and it's
it's
mind-boggling
insane.
to me. They put so much onus on going to a good
Yeah,
school. I
yeah.
bet you if you went back and talked to a lot of those kids that went to these schools and spent all this money, like they're probably not doing what they went to school for.
Well, I
Uh,
mean that, yeah, I read more and more. Not only are they not doing what they're went to school for, but they're living at home till they're in their early 30s because they can't afford, one, a home, or two, to even pay rent, because they're coming out already out the gate with like a $1,500 a month college loan payment. Like, what do you do with that, right? And it's just backwards. It's really backwards at that point. And fortunately, I live in California, and that's one thing I think I know where the money goes is you can go to community college here for $1,000 a semester, maybe even $1,500 for the whole year.
yeah,
And then if you go to a state school, a California state school, it's relatively cheap compared to, $10,000 maybe, opposed to, like, if you go to Harvard, God forbid, that's what, 100 grand a year. I don't know what it is at this point, right? But yeah, I think that's a good conversation too. And I'm not surprised to your response on college because of your mindset. And I think it's really interesting. Everyone I talk to has some similar conversations, especially if they're an entrepreneur. So
yeah.
thanks
I
for
mean,
sharing that, man.
Mike, if you can get into Harvard, like you're probably going to be successful no matter what you do. With how difficult that is. So all the power to you. Like obviously, if
Right,
you're going to Harvard, there's a reason, right?
right,
Like you're going to come out, you're going to go into a big law firm, or you're going to be a doctor, or whatever it
right,
might be, or you're going to get the best business education that money can buy. And I'm sure the brain, the minds that have gone to create those curriculums are just so
right,
far beyond any,
right,
definitely beyond my what I
right,
can even comprehend. So, but those
right.
guys would be successful no matter what they do. And in
A
that case,
hundred,
yeah, absolutely. If you're
100%.
getting into Harvard, then you should go to school.
Right.
But spending $80,000 or $90,000 a year to go to the school just to have it on your resume. It's look. I'm not saying people shouldn't go to school. What I'm saying is that for me, it's just not the path. I think there's other ways, and especially this day and age.
It's yeah, I totally see where you're coming from, but it is interesting what you just said about Harvard, though, because if you think about it and translate it into Web3, people have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to be into the Bored Ape network, and
Yeah,
you say go to Harvard because not only are you getting a skill set, top educate, like, listen, my wife's a lawyer, she did not go to a top tier law school. Law is one of those things that, like, if you want to get a job at the best place, you have to go to a top 20 law school, right? You
for
got to
sure.
go to Michigan, you got to go to Cornell, Harvard, Yale, all of these places, right? You're just not going to get a job. They see your resume. Oh, you went to University of Baltimore Law School, throw that out in flames, right?
Yeah,
But the other benefit is the network of people that go to Harvard, just like you pay big money in a network of people that own a PFP and Web3, that ultimately is what you're paying for, right?
no, of
So
course.
So it's really interesting that you say once we talk about Harvard, absolutely go, because it does open an insane amount of doors for you, knowing the right people. We all know networking is one of the most powerful things for sure to progress any career, no matter what you're doing, even if you have your own business, right?
Yeah, and you know, just to jump a little into Web3, I know you kind of wanted to save that for the end of the
Yeah,
conversation, but um, you know, just as you said, like there's the networking is really all that matters, right? So when I first got into Web3, people were selling out NFT projects that were just Fiverr artists and making $1 million, and you know,
right.
this onslaught of people came in, and it seemed so easy. Well, that ended pretty fast,
Yeah,
and then you saw people that had great products and had spent a lot of time and money on things, and they didn't even get close to selling out their project, and you know, it died on as soon as it was launched because they didn't have business experience. You know, they were maybe younger people, but um, you know, if they, without that network, without, you know, getting those people on board, it's impossible to spread the word. And it really is the same in life as well, right? Like,
right.
you see, as you said, you work in a corporate job. Like if you're not buddies with the guy who's doing the promotions and the hiring, you're probably going to be stuck at a level for quite some time, right?
Right. Right.
You know, so
Absolutely.
life is really more about making relationships than it is anything else.
Yeah, and what's interesting is, and we'll talk about this later too, but to your point, the transition that Web3 has made, right? To your point in the beginning, when people were, you know, Pixelmon, right? That guy hired Fiverr artists, made a one video and made, dude, he made like $70 million or
Yeah,
something crazy, right?
that's the one that really stood out to me as well.
This kid, by the way, was in his early 20s, right? Had no clue what he's doing. I actually have some buddies that, like, know the full story. I know the full story behind it. It is wild. I think they will make a documentary about it one day, but it's insane, right? But the point is, uh, that network that he quote unquote cultivated was all fake. I mean, it was built off hype. It was built off, I'm gonna make a lot of money, and everyone was wag me, and we're all friends and butterflies and sunshine. And I saw this, like I told you, I was original hate mod. Same thing, right?
I was just
We
gonna
ended up
say,
with
that's a very good one, yeah.
yeah, we ended up with 1 million people in a Discord server, 1 million, right? That will never happen again. In the first month and a half, it was one of the most magical things I ever saw.
Yeah.
People were in VCs 24/7. They were having free design seminars. Everyone was bringing their expertise. Everybody was buddy. There was, you know, all of these different forums based on your interest, and there was like genuine connection and love happening.
Yep.
But a month before the project dropped, guess what? Everyone realized there's a 0.000% chance that you're ever going to get hate list, and now all of the FUD and the anger starts coming out, right?
Yeah.
So that time period, to your point, created this crazy network, but it was almost a false network. It's a really interesting social experiment in that 2021 to 2022 time frame. Any thoughts about that, or do
I
you
mean,
kind
there's
of
the thing with Web3 that really attracts me is there's endless amounts of skilled and very, very smart people in the space, right? And Hape is a great example. I mean, there was a lot of projects, you know, Project Goodyear and stuff like that early on that had these small, tight communities or larger, tight communities that would be fantastic. But the biggest thing that happened was that there's now so many projects,
yeah,
and as more and more came out, you know, those kind of genius minds that had real, you know, a real reason for what they were doing. They were genuine people that
right.
actually wanted to stick within a community or build things. They just got stretched thinner and thinner. And you'd be
Mhm.
lucky if you kind of got a couple of those genuine guys. And as the time went on, it just became more and more people who were just looking for a quick flip, right? They're
Yeah,
just looking to make money. They pretended they liked the community style. So to me, this is why we built a very utility-based project,
yeah,
because, you know, when I see projects now coming out with great marketing and cool art and fun kind of things leading up to their mint, and they've done something maybe a little bit unique,
right,
um, if it's based on community after the mint is done, we've
right,
seen it however many times, the interest just dwindles, and it's not even about money, right? It's not even about floor price or anything like that. It's just that they've moved on to the next thing, and to
right.
actually encapsulate those people and keep them in kind of focused on one community is very difficult. So,
Very
you know, when you
difficult.
find guys that have these really tight small groups
Yeah,
that are still kind of pushing things forward together. To me,
Yeah.
that's, those are some of the most valuable groups for community projects in
100%.
Web3.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had the Crypto Dads. I don't know if you ever heard of that
I
project. I
did.
had
Yeah.
the founder on, well, he was actually a community member, bought the project from the original founders. And we had a similar conversation, which is you cannot have hype last forever, right?
No.
And if that is what the founding basis of your project is, why people got interest in the beginning, you're gonna fail, right?
Yeah.
But I love your comment about utility. Let's do episode 2 real quick. Already having a killer Web3 conversation. Can't wait to hear your mindset about Web3, but I'm very interested in your entrepreneurship journey. So how about you break that down, however, like chronologically, whatever you think makes sense, maybe highlight 2 of your biggest wins, 2 of your biggest losses, wherever you want to go, man.
Yeah. I mean, being an entrepreneur is incredibly difficult,
Yeah,
and this is actually the thing that attracts, I think, a lot of people to Web3. But it also, like, as an outsider looking in, it's like almost disgusting,
right.
because, as we said, in the old days, or even still to this day, sometimes people are just throwing these things together with that have a strong backing. By that I mean, like, influencers pushing them, or they've built a community somehow, and they're making $1 or $2 or $3 million.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurs will work their entire lives to maybe sell their company for $1 or $2 or $3 million, and we're talking no paychecks for 10 years. We're talking putting money out of your own pocket. We're talking going in at 2 a.m. if you have to. So, it's almost unfair in a way, but that's why a lot of genius people are in Web3, and that's why it's in this day and age, especially, like, using your phone and your computer to make money is far smarter than using your hands.
Yeah.
So, but for me, unfortunately, as I was kind of hinted to earlier, I started in the restaurant industry. And,
That's a tough one. I
yeah,
bartended and waited tables, bro. Yeah, that is
yeah.
not
And,
for
and,
the
that, and that's
faint
the
of heart.
reason why, right? Like, growing up and going through college and stuff, I was always a bartender or a waiter. And, I was more chasing, I think, again, the women and the parties and the fast money. And it's a lot of fun.
Right.
When I came out of school, I was okay at it, and I thought, I'm going to start my own restaurant. So, I grew that from 1 to 3 restaurants, and I created a group. And luckily, I was one of the guys that was able to be successful in my early days, and that was a lot of fun. And then
Yeah.
and then I started having kids.
Yeah, and then that happens. So I wanna stop you real quick there, though, because I think there's one thing to say, "Hey, I'm an entrepreneur," and you started a mom and pop local shop, and the business is helping you maintain a lifestyle, I think
Yeah,
is what I'm getting at, right? And you are okay making, after all said and done, 150 grand a year. You own a business that you love, and everything's hunky dory. You then took the restaurant, you know, made 2 or 3 more, and then created a group. That to me is like leveling up a little bit and taking it one step further. I'd be really interested in what skill sets you think you learned or needed to go from, in my mind, level 1 to level 2, which is a restaurant group.
yeah. Things get harder, as you expand. Especially if we're talking specifically about restaurants, it's probably one of the most difficult things to scale, because if you do well in one, that doesn't mean anything for the next one. And
Right.
you can have great operators in restaurants that do a fantastic job, but a lot of it's a byproduct of the location and the hype, and just kind of the regulars that you get within that business. And when you do it, whether it be the same concept or a different concept in another location, that doesn't always translate into the next spot. So,
Right.
it's a really difficult industry to scale, and I think you have to be honest, more than anything, just lucky to kind of have them all be successful. And we look at, say, Gordon Ramsay, for example. He's closed 23 restaurants, right? So we know that guy's surrounded by the best minds in the restaurant industry. We know he's got the best products. We know he's got whatever it needs for marketing and to make it successful. But yet he still closes restaurants from time to time, because it's not all about who you are and what you've done. It's about, more so about, how's the location? Is there butts in the seats every day? and things like that. So for me to go from 1 to 3 was probably, as I said, there was a lot of luck involved.
Hmm.
But it was a lot of fun, and you learn a lot along the way. And I was 22 when I opened the first one, so you
Wow.
learn a lot of things the hard way.
Yeah.
Kind of getting from 1 to 3, and man, it's like 5 a.m. the phone's ringing, and then 2 a.m. on the other end it's ringing too, right? So
Right.
it's an industry that I would recommend nobody go into in an ownership play. But it's fun. It's also the most fun industry as well, right? So if things
Right.
are good, there's nothing better.
Right.
Um, so there's pros and cons as there is to anything else, but there's a lot of risk involved in that industry.
Yeah, dude, you said a couple things, and I think people need to realize this as well as one, the Gordon Ramsay comment, right? Everyone looks at Gordon Ramsay as he's successful all the time, right? But no, he's closed a shit ton of restaurants because it's a hard industry. But you see this dude all over the place, right? But this guy has been working his ass off for decades in the same industry. And I cannot say enough about consistent work over a long period of time. Constantly comes up as one of, I think, the number one, to your point. And the second point is luck, right? If
Yeah,
you have luck and you have dedication over a long period of time, I think that helps increase your luck, but you still need luck, right? And it's great to hear successful entrepreneurs like you that have opened up multiple businesses to admit it's luck. Because I've also heard successful entrepreneurs that say it's all just blood, sweat, and tears, and I'm calling bullshit on that. Like,
yeah,
you got to be at the right place at the right time sometimes, and to your point, pick the right location or even pick the right business at the right time period, right?
yeah, yeah,
Just like Web3, people made mint on 2021. Now the real people are doing it 2 years later and they're struggling, right?
yeah.
So it's really interesting to hear you say that. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. As you said, I think it's just it's just something, as you said, you got to work hard, but also you got to be incredibly lucky. So um, you know, in any industry as well, but in the restaurants it's a tough one. So
Right.
for my next venture after restaurants, I kind of went a bit of a different route, and I
Oh, I
think that
can't wait to hear this.
I think that the biggest thing in restaurants is that you just have those costs every month, and when things aren't going well, they just eat up all the savings so fast, and it's very
Right.
stressful as the owner. So, for my next venture, we actually I partnered with some guys in the U.S. and we created a fully autonomous vending machine, a frozen yogurt vending machine, like a
Oh,
next level vending machine. So this thing is fully robotic. It's got a robotic arm inside of it. And what happens is, and let me just take back for a second. The reason that I loved this business is because you're eliminating all those costs, right? So you don't have this fixed rent, and you don't have labor, and you don't have all these bills that you're going to have to pay, whether the sales are $1 or $1,000. So with this company, what we did was we created this machine that goes into airports and schools and movie theaters and things along those lines, and it operates autonomously. So the person who's responsible for taking care of the machine can just see through telemetry on their phone. Is it broken down? Is it short on product? Does it need cups or spoons or whatever it may be? And we just place them into high foot traffic locations, and they just operate. And as I'm sure you can imagine, they're pretty fucking cool. I'm not allowed to
right.
swear.
Right.
They're pretty cool. So there's a huge attraction for people that are in the area just to check it out,
Yeah.
and it drives a lot of foot traffic into the location as well, which is a nice byproduct for them.
Right. No, that's awesome. And there was I worked downtown San Francisco for a little bit, and there was an autonomous coffee place where a
Okay.
robot arm poured the coffee, and like, yeah, to your point, like that block, I would walk past the block because there was always a crowd of people like blown away watching this thing, right? And there was another, and I think it's a lot in Asia and stuff. And this was always an interesting concept to me because it had the look of a autonomy where it was, one of those like sandwich places where you would go in, use the kiosk, and then it would give you like a number drawer, and when it was ready, you could pull your sandwich out. But actually, there were people cooking stuff in the back. You
I
just
like
never
that
saw
hot
them.
dog now.
But that's also another interesting concept, like how can you cut costs, right? The question, I think the natural question, is exactly that, like the mindset. I know obviously cost was one thing, like you said, in the traditional restaurant business, your savings were getting eaten up. What did you learn over that second venture when you started the autonomous thing? Like you liked the money better, or did you like the autonomy better? Was it just easier to run? Like, what are thoughts there and insights that you gained?
Yeah, I mean, operating that, I mean, that company still exists to this day, and we actually have taken it a step further and now made a smoothie vending machine as well. And you know, the greatest part about that business is that it's very simple, right? So
Right.
we actually ended up franchising them, and I've partnered with you know, a group here in Canada called Yogan Frues. They also own a brand called Pinkberry, and we're now,
Yeah.
you know, they're now starting to rebrand the machines with those well-known brands, and we have some of them active already out there in the field. And you know, the greatest part of it is that you know, it's lower stress. It operates itself. It frees up a lot of time for myself to be with my family or to work on things like this, and to spread myself a little further. It, you know, frees up a lot of bandwidth,
Yeah.
which is nice. But you know, the real greatest part, I think, of growing that business to where it is today is that, you know, it was all again through connections, right? So getting these locations and getting better deals from vendors, and we ended up franchising a lot of those machines, and um, you know, and the operators are the ones who are responsible for taking care of them. So it's just a support network at that point, and you know, it's a really fun company.
Yep. And then last question, and we can move on to Web3. This is great, fascinating conversation already. I really appreciate the insight. I'm interested with this business in particular. You obviously had built a lot of skill sets creating a restaurant company and group before. I'm interested in your insight for someone that is like, oh man, I want to be an entrepreneur. The second option sounds better. What skill sets do you think you gain that like someone with fresh eyes is like, dude, that froyo business and smoothie business autonomous sounds awesome. What do you think the skill sets that you have that that one person that is super green wouldn't have, and things that they should think about if they wanted to do something like that?
Yeah, I mean, to operate a single restaurant, or as you said, you're basically buying yourself a paycheck, right? So to operate a single business or something like that, I mean, that's franchising and single store operation is fantastic for a lot of families, and it'll provide for them forever. But there's just so much risk that's there, and I think that any entrepreneur will tell you, like, you learn a lot of things by losing a lot, right? So you know, there's not everything works, and you need to have funding that's not everything you have, because things fail, and just, you know, in any industry, and especially if you're going to, you know, create, you know, things that have never really been done before, you're always gonna there's always going to be roadblocks along the way. So I think that what you pick up, or what I've picked up over the years, is that you start to be able to kind of proactively see these things coming before they hit you in
Mm,
the head, right? Like the
mhm.
train is coming down the tracks, and the more experience you have, the faster you start running before it kind of knocks you over.
Right.
You know, so even with my second company, like, you know, we were able to, as opposed to at the beginning, we were just kind of cold calling locations, like, hey, can we put a machine in your university? And then we started to realize, like, there's large groups called, you know, Compass and Airmark and Sodexo that service all these locations, and we just were able to go directly to them and create these partnerships. So now it's just a phone call, like, hey, I need 10 spots in, you know, Baltimore, wherever you know, you mentioned earlier, and okay, no problem. Here's these 10 locations. You know, so I think you get a little smarter along the way.
Right.
To Instead of just looking at things from just a small scope, you really look at it from the overview of, like, okay, let's plan 5 moves ahead, so that, you know, when we get to here, we're already ready for this, and we're not going to hit this roadblock. And
Right.
that, I think, that type of knowledge for any entrepreneur is, it's either natural, like some people just naturally have that,
Right.
um, but for a lot of people, you got to learn that, and you know, it's just like becoming a poker player, right? Like, you got to lose your stack a bunch of times before you start to realize what's going on,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and you start getting a little smarter with it. So, you
Dude,
know, those are the skills that are kind of tougher to just naturally have.
yeah, man, and I love that You said something that I don't hear a lot of people say, which is that insight and seeing the train coming down the tracks. I think that's a really interesting way to put it. Even with me and as a content creator, right? I don't know if I told you, but similar things, like we spent all last year. I mean, I had a podcast every two times a week, religious, same time, streamed it, right? But we still covered Web3 people, but we had a brand. Well, single influencer, and really picking the right project, that's all that matters in
Yeah.
Web3. And Twitter spaces matter more than a podcast, right? Even though we know our product is a differentiator in the space, it didn't work, right? And so what we've done this year is use the Mikey G persona, because I have been in the space for years. I have some recognition and really creating Web3 as a solo influencer, creative person, as myself, but we're still keeping Midlife Crisis and changing that more to a YouTube brand, and talking to, in the same vein, everyday entrepreneurs. But our brand shtick there is, you don't have to be Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg. You can be like yourself and be successful and still have a cool life, and you don't need to create freaking Facebook, right?
Yeah.
But what could have saved us a shit ton of time, and we would have been a lot further if we would have just taken this strategy and done it last January, right? Because we've only been doing the strategy for a month, and crazy things are already happening on the Web3 side because we're treating it different. So another example, kind of in my content creation world, of how just time and learning is something that guides your strategy, right?
Yeah, and I think like the toughest thing with all of that is, you know, we're only really in the workforce, let's say, for 40 years, right? Kind of from the age of 20 to 60. And, you know, if you start a venture, it takes a long time, right? There's a lot of planning that's involved. There's usually some fundraising, and then you kind of build things out, and then you start it, whatever, even in any industry, right? It doesn't matter what it is. There's a lot of, you know, pre-planning that needs to happen. And then you go into operations, and if it's not successful, you're probably, you know, borrowing some money that you shouldn't at the end to kind of keep it going. And then you look back after it fails and you go, fuck, what was I thinking? I should have just shut this down. But you've wasted like 6 or 7 years. So if you're a true natural entrepreneur, then, you know, it's hard to get back on the horse, right? Maybe you've lost all the capital you had, or you borrowed money you shouldn't, or, you know, you got to pay people, whatever it is. It's hard to get something going again when your first thing was a failure. So, you know, you start something else that takes you another 5 or 6 years. You've already spent 10 years of your kind of adult life.
Right.
And you're 30 plus if you started young. And you know, you might have nothing. Right. So it's not for everybody, that's for sure.
And Gary V says that whether you like him or hate him, he makes a lot of good points. And one of the points he always says is like, and of course, in the day and age of social media, right? Like, entrepreneur is a cool thing now, right? And everyone wants to be an entrepreneur. But the reality is like, suicide rates are kind of high for entrepreneurs and founders. And like, it's a really fucking miserable life to live if you don't have the right purpose and drive, because most people are like, oh, I'm going to make a lot of money. But then, you know, the joke's on them 10 years later when they're like, oh, I actually made some money and I'm still fucking miserable, right? So like, what is that true driver, and why are you really doing what you're doing? And you just can't figure that out at 20. You got to go through that. So
here's like the biggest thing on that point for me, Mikey, is like, you know, I almost envy people that don't give a shit. Right. Like, if you're an entrepreneur, like, you really care. So you talk about like suicide rates and mental health stuff is a big thing these days. Typically, from an entrepreneur, that's because you really care, right? Like, especially, let's talk about the restaurant industry for a second. Like, you get a bad review and you've put your heart and soul and every dollar you have into that, and somebody, you know, gives you a poor reflection of what you've tried to create, that can really have an effect on people. And, you know, I was telling you earlier about my sister's bakery that we've opened. She's getting, you know, she got her first bad review and she's crying about it. Right. And I'm like, wait, like, you can't please everybody. You know, so sometimes I look at people that don't really care that much, and I envy them. Because like, they just go to sleep at 8:30 on the dot every night, and they wake up and they go to the gym, and like, whether they're an entrepreneur, they're punching a clock. Like there's almost something to be said for that. Like I wish I had some of that. For me, it's like I want everything to be perfect, right? And
Right.
like
Right.
I hate sleep, right? Like
And
there's always something better you can be doing. So it's difficult sometimes.
yeah, and I mean, you really hit the nail on the head there. The difference is, and I say, like, other than my sister who manages a hospital, and if she makes a mistake, people die, right? Like, that's a pretty
Yeah,
pressure, like, you better care about what you're doing, because if you make a mistake, bad shit happens. I think the only other one where you have that much weight is an entrepreneur, because if you fuck up, now someone's not putting food on the table for their family, right? And that's
yeah,
a very heavy burden. But, and I always say this, and I would love your thoughts on this. To be a billionaire, you can fire those people and, like you said, go to sleep at 8 o'clock, have your sound 8 hours of sleep, wake up and say, that's just a product of what I'm doing, and move on. I
yeah.
know that that is not me. Hence why I am in, like, content creation world trying to help people out, because the first time I would have to lay like 15 of my employees off and they're fucked. That would just devastate me. Any thoughts there?
I mean, there's a level of ruthlessness that you kind of have to have, right? If you're going to be a successful entrepreneur, and I see, like, I've done a lot of consulting over the years, and you go in there and they're shy to get rid of people that are very obviously need to
Yeah,
leave, and that's because they genuinely care, as you're saying. But if you're all care, like, you're going to get stomped on.
right.
And I always try to be as open and as kind to everybody as I can. But I think just with open communication and just real clear goals for people of what you expect from them,
Right.
you can feel okay at the end if you need to move on from
Yep.
them, because you've at least given them a shot. But
Yep.
like, you got to cut them fast. Like, if
Yeah.
there's people that aren't, that are taking you down, you hire slow and you fire fast. You've
Yeah.
probably heard that saying before. You That's probably another thing you learn, as you become, more and more as an entrepreneur. Like, they're just going to eat you forever. It's like a shitty girlfriend.
Yeah.
Like, if you have a bad girlfriend, it's never going to get better. Like,
Right.
that relationship's never going to improve.
You
Right? The
gotta
things
cut
that
it
are
at some
bothering you
point.
will bother you. You're not going to marry her. So
Yeah.
break up with her right now,
Right.
because you could meet somebody tomorrow at the grocery store that could have been a great wife for you,
Right.
and you're gonna lose that opportunity because you're staying with this person that you don't want to be with.
Right.
That applies to a lot of things in life.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting because I think, one of the things that you kind of hint on there is, like, that's a lot of self-awareness, being understand and be aware of your situation. But I think one of the things that I thought is, because I've never technically been really an entrepreneur until I started this podcast and it's basically, my side hustle, right? But you get this game, I've managed big teams and big budgets. One of my biggest mistakes in my 20s was to what I thought a good manager was being buddy buddy and nice to everybody, right?
The
And then
word,
I
the
had to
word.
learn the hard lesson of keeping a couple people on my team that should have not been there, because it was gut wrenching to think I need to get rid of these people. So I came to the same conclusion, not necessarily in an entrepreneurship, but I think that is more, and you can ladder that up to, that's really a leadership principle, right?
Yeah,
And whether you like it or not, if you want to lead effectively, you need to have a clear mission and vision. You need to be able to collaborate, cascade information down to your team, pick the right people for the roles. And when they're not, you either need to find them another job or get rid of them. And those are really tough decisions. And I've become more comfortable with that as I've gotten older, just like you have. So, really interesting insight as well. I think, all of these little principles, and this is why we go deeper in this podcast, like, we will talk about Web3 brand, but now we can clip this up and we can say, Benny's got his shit together, man. He knows what true leaders are. Like, this is the stuff in the content that I think is important for people to understand you and say, hey, this is a project and a person I can believe in. I will go spend my money because I think he can actually complete this casino, because I like his mindset and his being as a person.
yeah. No, it was what's happened over the last hour or so here. I wasn't expecting this. I thought we were talking Web3, so it's not the easiest thing to talk about yourself. So as I said, you'd be a great psychologist.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to go too deep, but I'm very interested in life experiences. But with that being said, man, any other thoughts around entrepreneurship or that moment in time, or are we ready to get into Web3?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk for hours about it, right?
Yeah.
So we might as well just move on, or else.
Hey, man, you're gonna come back on the show multiple times. I know it. We're gonna make
Yeah.
some more content in the future. I already feel it now. We're vibing real good. So
Okay.
let's go to Web3 and give me, since we've talked a lot now, we're already, like you said, we're almost at an hour and we haven't even hit Web3, and I still want to get to at least have 20 to 30-minute conversation about it. Give me the I always mess this up. Too long TLDR of your intro to Web3, and then we'll get to the project. I always say TDLR, and I'm like, that I don't think that's right.
Yeah, it's like artifact, like RTFK.
Right. How do you do that again?
When I learned that spelled artifact is the only time I could ever remember. I didn't realize that for the first year that project was up. Yeah, I mean, I got lucky, man. So I came in at the start of COVID or just before COVID,
Right.
and when I think a lot of people did, right? We were all sitting at home,
Mhm.
and we just had these, this house that we just needed to figure out something to do. And I was doing a lot of day trading. Like naturally, I think a lot of people were. It was kind of around the Robinhood time,
Yeah.
and it was something that I had dabbled in before. And when, of course, when everything shut down, as you can imagine, the companies that I had were in were in universities and airports and movie theaters, heavily populated areas. They were all closed, and I had nothing but free time. So I was trading a lot of stocks, and I wish I had kind of jumped over to NFTs and crypto a little bit earlier, because
Right.
I missed the Bored Ape rush and things like that. But my first mint was 15 pudgy penguins, and
Wow.
I obviously got incredibly lucky to for that to just, I don't even know why. Like, I think it's just I had started following a couple of guys, and actually I was doing a lot of DraftKings, like sports betting,
Right.
and
Right.
those guys, kind of a few of the leaders in that DraftKings space, were starting to switch their profile pictures to hooded punks, and their Top Shots was big for them, and they were talking
Right.
about, oh, this is $20,000, and I was like, this doesn't make sense, and I kind of ignored it for a month or two, and it just stuck around. So, like a lot of people still think to this day, I kind of thought, like, this is a scam.
Right.
It'll be gone fast, and it became too big to ignore,
Right.
especially as a guy who likes to gamble and have fun and be part of these cool things that's up and coming. It just made a lot of sense for me to okay, this has been around long enough, let's take a look. So I don't know why I minted pudgy penguins. I think somebody I just followed on Twitter had mentioned it, and
Yeah.
I remember I had done it, and then I had also bought a few more before I went to a hockey game one evening, and
Right.
I think the floor was like 0.08 or something small. And when
Yeah.
I came out of the hockey game, it was like 0.15 or something. Like, it had like doubled. And I remember thinking, like, I can't get 100% return in a month if I'm lucky, without using some sort of leverage. Like, this is awesome. And
Right.
I got more interest. So of course I quickly sold about 14 of those 17 pudgy penguins, because I
Mhm.
had made 100% return on my capital.
Right.
And over the next couple of weeks, I dwindled myself down to one. But I had this bag of money. I've only ever really deposited one time into crypto.
Right.
I had a few Ethereum, right, which was going up every day as well. So that was kind of the play money, and I held on to that pudgy penguin for a long time. I think I sold that one around 7 or 8, and of course now they're just really doing fantastic.
It's insane.
But that opened up my eyes, and I think now I'm 4,500 to 5,000 trades on my main account.
Wow.
Ether. I was buying and selling things like crazy, just trying to chase the next thing. And
That's
as
degen status,
yeah,
bro.
as like a day trader guy, I kind of looked at it as like, okay, this is my day trader job. But I think a lot of people did, but I never got really big into the communities, because I was kind of in and out. But in those early years, you learned a lot real fast about what was kind of cool and what wasn't. And I
Right.
kind of had a natural knack for kind of seeing what was going to keep going up, and what was going to come down fast.
Right. That's awesome, man. That's That's a great intro story, and I think a perfect segue into, uh, you experienced all the hype, like, did you remember Hate Beast? I went through that too. I mean, that was the same thing. I probably worked more than I had ever had at any corporate job for 3 months just modding that
Yeah,
server.
what were they paying mods at the Hate Beast
Well, so
Discord
that's
server?
the thing. I got,
Like, did you get one
uh
mint or something?
no, we got 3.
Oh, that's good.
And so for 3 months, I was going through IVF at the time. I paid for a round of IVF through one, and
Jeez.
I sold like all of the mods are like, "Oh, I'm holding these forever." And I'm like, "You're fucking crazy. If
Yeah.
these things get close to 10, like I had a number in mind. I was like, even if they hit 6 or 7, which I knew they were gonna at least like I had my range, I was like 4's low, right? If they explode, they could go double digits, and they hit 8 and then they hit 9, boom, sold that shit right
Yeah.
away, right? So for 3 months worth of pretty hard work, which I'd say is not even hard work being in Discord for 10 to 12 hours a day, which isn't really hard work. I made 36 ETH. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And this is
Well,
when
what would ETH worth? Would ETH like $4 or $5 thousand
ETH
dollars?
was like 4,500 bucks,
Yeah,
bro.
that's a lot of
Now,
money.
I am the opposite of you, where I dwindled all of that money pretty much down, and I, only had a handful of ETH within 8 months of that because I suck at investing. And this is another thing I was self-aware. I was like, I should just do content and community management because that's what I'm good at. I'm not going to try to be a degen and day trade away because I'm just too trusting and I throw money at stupid shit. So I learned my lesson the hard way. I should be a millionaire right now, but I'm not
Yeah,
because I just didn't
many
make
people
the right.
should, my friend.
Yeah, I didn't make the right moves. But listen, man, not many people have a close to 40 ETH head start like I did, and I'm still not there. Uh, but that's besides the point. What I'm getting at is you saw these crazy upswings and downswings to the market, and now we're here. You're starting a project on a totally different blockchain that is definitely obviously getting hyped now, but isn't the traditional Ethereum or Solana. I actually equate what is happening to Say right now as like 2021 Solana, right? Like
100%.
there's a lot of rugs. You don't know if it's legit. I found you through Nikki G because I've been part of his content creation network. And Nikki G, every time I've worked with somebody, they've been pretty legit. And then we had a conversation. And I was like, yeah, you're the real deal. So I would love to hear about the thought process first on why you picked a casino and kind of the brainstorm about what type of NFT you were going to start, and then we can go into why you picked Say. I'm really interested in these two things.
Yeah, finally, Mikey. You spent an hour. Everybody's going to fast forward to now. This is the
So
starting
so
point.
that's why I said, man, I cut up clips, brother. So not
Yeah.
there are actually a lot of people that love the deep long format. That's what
Yeah.
I've built my brand off of. But hey, man, I'm gonna cut you up, and we're gonna get a lot of good clips that hopefully your community uses to blow it all up.
100%. Yeah. No, I mean, this is what I'm passionate about these days, right? I think that, so for me, it was nice to have as you said, a head start with Ethereum. So I wanted to start my own project for a long time that it was going to be something successful because this is where I want to be. And it saddens me to watch what happens to a lot of these projects.
Right.
Right. And to be honest, there's probably only, I don't even know the number, 30 that are real projects.
Oh,
They use
for
that
sure.
word. They use that word so loosely in this space,
Right.
and everything's a project. I mean, I'm building a project, quote unquote, but we're building a business.
Right.
So we've actually been building this for 2 years,
Okay.
and I think some of my community would have heard me speak before. Like, for me, I always dreamed. I think, and a lot of people who bought and sold a lot of NFTs kind of always chased that dream of buying something for a low price, and then it's actually legit, right? And they've got all these things in the back burner that don't. It doesn't just kind of run out of steam in a month,
Right.
and all the excitement wears off and it's gone, or maybe they have a token attached to it, and if there's not fresh liquidity coming in, it's going to go to zero pretty fast, especially
Right.
if for use in their game. right? As we also see far too much used in this space. So we wanted to build something that was legitimate. So to put the chicken before the egg, not to put the chicken before the egg, like the first kind of conversations we had about the project was just the concept of it. We didn't know it was going to be gambling. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to create a project that was, number one, community and team based. So we wanted to have teams that were playing something, against each other, but also as individuals. So there's a leaderboard somehow that's, accumulating points as kind of a, scorekeeping mechanism. And they're competing for a prize pool. And, what it took us about 2 years to figure out was, number one, how do you replenish that prize pool? Because as we talked about, people's attention span in Web3 is very, very low. Right. And we've never actually really seen a cool game that people really wanted to play long term. I mean, I think there's a few out there, and maybe I just, I'm not into everything as I used to be. So I don't know them. But are people logging on every day to actually play something for free because they want to? And again, secondly, like, is the token going to last? Probably not. Like, one of my other early projects I got into was Wolf Game, which was unbelievable at the start, right? And the price of wool hit 50 cents at one point, and now I think it's 0.008 cents or something. And because you need fresh liquidity, and even with all those big names, you can't do it. So who am I to think I'm going to be able to draw enough attention that we're going to get fresh money in every day? I had trouble getting enough attention to launch Legendary League. So taking it back though, we wanted to create this kind of ecosystem first. And over the course of, as I said, almost 2 years, and we're about $200,000 into this, we figured out what the whole thing was. And when I, again, taking it back to the start, when I was talking about running before the train hits you, like, we've thought through each kind of step of what comes next. And, even if you go into our Discord now, there's all people still asking questions because we've kept a lot of stuff hidden. And over the last couple of days, I've been able to start having some conversations with some other big people in the SAY space and start to show them what we've actually done on the back end. And they leave the conversation mind blowing. And, I'm a guy who's like, to my community, like, if you want to sell, you sell. And I'm never going to give anybody financial advice because, of course, I'm the one leading the project. But, like, for me, it was always just like, hey, guys, if this isn't a lot of money for you, just tuck it away because stuff's coming fast. And I always, and often I'll say in my community, like, we're, slow at first and then all at once, because we've got a lot of stuff coming. So I think I've kind of jumped ahead there a bit, but we built the project very, very properly and slowly, and we spent a lot of time once we realized it was going to be a gambling project. And I don't know how much you know about the project, but once we realized it was going to be a social gambling project, it took us a lot of time and money.
Yeah, I hopped in when Nikki showed it to me, and then that's when I called you because I thought it was an interesting concept. Take me through real quick when you had the aha moment that it was going to be a casino, because you had this like kind of social group thing, which is an interesting concept. When did you kind of like take the plunge and say, hey, casino makes sense for this setup?
I'd say it was like probably 6 months after we kind of came up with the idea of the concept. It was just buddies talking at the start, right? And then once we kind of had this makes sense for a casino moment, it's again like taking it back to learning, new businesses. We thought we could just call up these casinos providers and like the pragmatic guys in the hackathon and be like, hey, we're going to use your games on our social casino where people can play it for free for a large prize pool each month. And is that okay with you? And they were like, who the fuck are you? Why are you calling us? And no, you can't use our games. They're like, well, we'll give you some money. And they're like, bro, so we went to the ICE convention about just over a year ago now, and we walked the floor, in our nice suits, all excited and ready to chat with these guys. And we told them what they're doing, and they're like, beat it. Like,
that's hilarious.
They're like, we do not care about this stuff. Like, you think it's great, right? But for us, like, these are massive. When we realized the size of these studios and how much capital they're bringing in, and luckily I had a friend who worked at Evolution Gaming who after this was able to kind of inform me of how these things work.
Back to networking, bro.
Man, we got knocked down a peg after that. I actually thought, like, okay, well, at that point I think we were whatever amount of money into it, like, well, this is dead. Right? We might as well just stop now. So it took us a good another 6 months, just from number one, a lot of those people we met in London and went out for beers with and got to connect with from these studios to be able to pitch them our idea better. But once we were able to really explain to them that this ecosystem isn't just the social casino, there's a social casino, there's a token in the middle that keeps the whole ecosystem moving, and then there's a real money casino, which is what kind of funds it all and keeps
Right.
all the funds coming. And that's where, I don't know how far you want to dive into that, but that's really where, we don't need that fresh liquidity from NFT buyers, or we
Yeah.
don't need people buying our token to keep the show on the road.
Right.
We've got a casino that, if successful, you never know. I'm not naive to the fact that it may not be, but if successful, this whole ecosystem flows off of that, and a lot of that benefit is coming back to the holders of this first collection that we've launched.
Right. No, man, I love it, and I do want to dive deep. I think I want to stop you here, and I always ask this question because I'm very interested to see what the founders say. But it is the elevator pitch question, right? So me and you, we're actually I'm working for the investment firm. I somehow hit you in the elevator, and you're like, "Listen, I'm just gonna pitch you," and I got till the 10th floor. So purposely concise, right? 2 minutes max, preferably a minute. If I'm spending my hard-earned money with you, give me the pitch, a minute pitch of what I'm getting.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm talking to a VC, it's a pretty simple conversation, right? Like we have a token that is the overlord of our ecosystem that has a tremendous amount of utility. So I think that whether you look at like Stake or Rollbit or any of these types of casinos, and Rollbit obviously had a very successful token launch. What we're looking for you to invest in within our token is a token that not only gives players within our casino additional rewards and rake back using our token over another token. So assuming we have a successful casino, people are swapping, say, Ethereum or Bitcoin ahead of time, depositing it into our casino, and then leaving a little bit of it behind,
Right.
as the odds may be, which of course you as an investor in that token is driving the value of those tokens up each time that happens, because now they're in our hands, which they're not, they're not going anywhere. Right. And then the biggest thing for our casino is that those tokens are deflationary. So if you were investing in the token, that's your ownership. Without going through securities law and things like that, how we're kind of skirting around that is that you're buying these tokens, and then what's happening is that the profitability from the casino, a large percentage of those profits are actually being burned. So we're burning that capital, thus making your tokens more and more valuable. Right. Thus, if you take it back to our social casino, the people who own the casinos are given these tokens through staking. So the mechanism, and we saw this with Rollbot, and it was very successful for them, right? They launched at a $5 or $8 million market cap, whatever it was, and they had 500 million at one point. Right. So those early holders that were getting dropped those tokens became incredibly wealthy. Right? Guys who had 100, and those Rollbits were whatever they were, 0.1 Ethereum or something. I think they even gave them for free. So the elevator pitch to a VC guy is like, that's kind of how that token, where the value is in that token, is that without having to sign some sort of an agreement or become a partner in our business, you're investing in a token that's value is raised by the success of this casino. Right. Now, if we
I love that. So let's cut it there, because I think that's a little more than 2 minutes, but you did a good job explaining. A couple questions.
Never 2 minutes, Mike. If they're good, they're never 2 minutes.
Yeah. No, but I the reason why I ask is because it makes for really good social content, right? But I can cut that up. It's going to be great. 2 things that pop from your explanation, though, that was really good for an investor. One, you mentioned, obviously, if you're in early, you have the potential to make a lot of money. How are you enticing people that find this a year from now to be interested in this that aren't early, and why should they care? Let's start there.
Yeah, because there's a few different places to invest once our ecosystem's. Oh, you there, Mike?
Yeah, you cut out a little bit, so go ahead.
That's what I was saying. There's a few different avenues once this is fully completed for people to invest. So somebody who's looking to buy our original NFT collection, the Cinos, they're still farming those tokens. So a percentage of those are coming back every single month to those stakers, and that's benefiting them. So obviously, as we know how intelligent people are in the NFT space, they're going to find that balance of like, I'm getting on average, $5,000, whatever it is a month. The price is probably going to be pretty reflective to that, the floor price of those tokens as to what they're getting each month. So, once that happens, just holding that, you're going to have that passive income. if you're buying one of those, it's because you want to be part of this ecosystem and you believe in it long term, which is probably driven by how successful our casino is, right? So,
Right.
we've got a large marketing budget plan for that casino. If we're able to even take a small percentage of the market share, well, now you're kind of, by buying that, you're kind of passively investing into that casino.
Right.
People who are buying the token, or let's say people who are buying, playing into the social casino, and without giving away too much alpha here, the players of the social casino, which I don't want to say they aren't casinos, because they are, but there's another mechanism there in the middle. Those people are having fun, right? So,
right.
Just to give the viewers who don't know about the project a little bit about it, if you're buying one of the Legendary League tokens to play in the casino, you're competing each month. Basically, you're playing the games that you want to play every day on Stake or Rollbet, or these places, these top studios, Pragmatic and Hacksaw and Push, and all these guys. You're playing those games that you love, and that you kind of have that you're getting that adrenaline rush from. But if you play them for free, it's boring. So we kind of skipped past the origin of Legendary League. The idea when we came up with gambling was, we want people to be able to play those same games that you want to play every day, or that some people have terrible addictions because they can, buy the free spins, or they want to play a hand of blackjack for free, but for a reason, right? So if you're a gambler and you play free spins for $0, that's boring. Nobody would ever, you do that a few times and you're bored stiff. Well, I won 10 million fun money tokens. Whereas in our ecosystem, not only is it fun because you're moving up the leaderboards and you can see that live on our website, but also you're part of not only an individual prize pool, but a team prize pool. Each team has 100 players. So we have on our website built a chat room that's token gated. So there's only you and the 99 other players on your team that are in that chat room. So when you win a big jackpot, you now go and share it with the other players on your team, and you feel like some happiness, because not only are you moving yourself up the individual leaderboard, you're helping out your team and you're getting cheered on. So if you think about that competition, let's say the prize pool is $100,000 and the first place team gets $35,000, just as an example, you can see the leaderboard live. So as the gaming cycles last for 1 month, as that cycle gets close to the finish line for the month, maybe your team's in 5th place and only the top 4 teams are getting paid out. You can only imagine that chat room, like, okay, guys, let's all put all of our chips on the New England Patriots tonight to win the football game. We also have sports betting as well to win the football game. And you're like watching the game together as a team, and the Patriots win. Think about that chat room just going off, cool. And how exciting that is. And now you've moved up into 2nd place, and the team just won $20,000 to split up, or whatever it might be. That's the concept of Legendary League. It's not just about the money. It's also about the community. And, we did it in a different way, where it wasn't meant to be a short-term project. It was meant to be funded by a casino, but we're not saying to our players, like, shoving down their throat, hey, come and lose all your money to us in our casino. The casino operates as any other, a crypto casino does. Right. And the fun of the ecosystem comes back to the social casino, which is totally separate. We've built our entire own backend for a social casino that takes care of all the the player rankings and how much does each person have, and we can run tournaments. We spent almost $50,000 building that proprietary system because it didn't exist. Every system was built for a real money casino, so there was no seeding available on those types of systems. So it wasn't like a white label solution. So we put a lot of time and effort into that, because that's really the lifeblood of the whole ecosystem. And yes, some players will naturally funnel into the real money casino to fund the ecosystem. So if you're a guy who plays on Stake, well, of course you're going to come play on League Casino instead if you're a whole casino, because now, if you lose your money, whether you lose it or win, if you do lose and leave a little bit behind, it's at least staying within the ecosystem. Number one, a lot of that's being burnt to raise the value of the tokens that you hold. And then number two, a lot of it's being put into the prize pool for the next month.
Right. Yeah. And to the people, like you said, and if I'm understanding correctly, the fresh people that don't even have a casino that are buying the token, if they win a lot of the token, that actually could fluctuate in price, and you could win even more money if you're owning the token, correct?
Yeah, so the token that we have on our social website is just a placebo, right? It's like a seeding token. It's just like a scorekeeper. So if you win, so at the start of every gaming cycle, every user gets 1 million of those, and they play throughout the month with those tokens. They play the slot machines or the roulette table or sports betting or whatever it is that they want to do within the ecosystem to kind of move up and down the leaderboard. There's a prize pool for the top percentage of individuals and then the top percentage of teams. So, those tokens don't have any intrinsic value. The league token that's in the middle is the token that kind of is the commander of the entire ecosystem.
Gotcha. No, that's awesome. Fantastic breakdown. It's the social gambling aspect is super interesting. And this is a prime example of like, if you take a person like yourself, like we said in the beginning, that has experience of businesses, can see the freight train coming, but also what I've got from your pitch and what you're doing is you've obviously exercised some creative muscles as well. Like, how do you take some interesting concepts of what you saw in Web3, what you like about gambling, knowing that, like, I literally gamble with my buddy because I want to be rooting for the game together and texting him, right?
Yeah,
Which is one of the best things ever. And now
yeah,
you solve that problem. Well, you now have solved that problem. You have added to the entertainment of gambling through Web3 in an interesting mechanism. So props to you, man. That's super, super cool.
yeah, man.
I
You think even about like in DraftKings, right? Those guys that are competing against each other,
right.
right? They're just beaking each other on Twitter all day long.
Oh, that's
So
all you do, man.
yeah, the community
Yeah,
part, like assuming Legendary Leagues, let's say it's uber successful, the
yeah,
amount of fun that the amount of fun, sorry, the amount of fun that's going to come from the community side is huge to us because
dude.
that's they're competing not only as teams but as individuals.
It's massive. I mean, I shit you not, like like I'm one of those rare breed that like four of my like childhood buddies, we all went to Penn State together. We still see each other once a year. Like we're still best friends and we're in our 40s. But my buddy will like, hey man, I've got this crazy parlay on hockey. Haven't watched hockey in a year. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm fucking in. Let's do it. Now I've got it. Now I've got an excuse to watch a game and cheer with my buddy, right? Like it's such a cool concept.
Yeah, I mean, back to your elevator pitch, right? We're just creating like a degenerate gambling community that if you're somebody who wants to risk real money, and you go right ahead. But the one of the core focuses for us is we're actually going to help problem gamblers,
Right.
right? Because like, you, as a guy who likes to gamble myself, like it's hard to stop if you're a player, right?
Right.
They say like, oh, you can do, there's all these things that you may be able to do to gamble, but typically a gambler is a gambler for life.
Right.
So you need an outlet, right? So as opposed to having to go and deposit 1 Ethereum into a casino and lose it, you can just come and play and feel like you're playing for real for free. And if you win, you actually are going to get something back from that, some prize pull back from that. That to me is actually like a better avenue for somebody who maybe has a problem than trying to quit cold turkey because the success rates are very low.
Yeah. And actually the people's elevator pitch of like why I should be interested as a Web3 person. And that was super concise. And I think that was fantastic. So let's do this. We've been vibing for an hour and 20 minutes. I told you an hour and 20 minutes. I'm gonna break that promise, just go a couple minutes more. Anything else that you want to talk about on how the CNOs works or what you have going on now before we kind of get into the next 6 to 12 months future and looking forward?
Yeah, I mean the CNOs. So I don't know if you know the CNOs was a failed mint, right? So
Yes, let's talk about
yeah,
actually two things. Before you go to the failed mints, because I forgot to ask this question, why say?
okay, yeah, good, yeah, great question. I mean, it was about attention, and originally, right? So this project was ready to go 4 or 5 months ago. Actually, probably even longer. We could have minted if we needed to, but Ethereum was getting boring. Like I love Ethereum. I shouldn't say that. I love Ethereum. But like if you looked at the volumes on Blur and you looked at things that were minting out, like unless you were like already VC backed and like had a fully functioning massive project, you're probably not selling out for more than some degenerate play at 0.02 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And probably you're not going to be lucky. So, we were kind of sitting on our hands. And when Say came around, I started really paying attention to it. And then, we saw guys like Llama hopping over and Beni was talking about it a lot. And it really started to pique my interest. And when I looked more into it and like the speed of the network, and then I started hopping in some of the Discords, and I'm seeing like these 2021 vibes of like guys whitelist grinding and guys like, just gif after gif of, this hilarious things and naked women and just like the fun of back in the old days, right? In these Discords. And I'm like, So, at that, I had a team that we were working with, Nicky G and his buddies, and I called him. I'm like, hey, Say is like popping off, man. Like, I'm really feeling this. And I bought a couple of them, and I figured out how to set up a Compass wallet. And he was, they were all against it, right? Because we saw so many chains ahead of time.
Right.
And as a good advisor, he should have been. We saw so
Right.
many chains kind of come and go, and the NFTs withered away, and nobody really pays attention to them anymore. And the more he looked into it too, he kind of came back a few days later. And he's like, "All right, let's do it." He's like, "You're right. The communities are really killing it, and it's still super early, but it looks like it's got some legs." And to be honest, we looked at ourselves as like a big fish in a small pond, because there wasn't a lot of things that were minting, and we felt like we had built something very serious out.
Right.
I think, to our own fault, as we move into the next thing, we probably didn't reveal enough. But
Right.
I'm almost glad it happened, because now we have so much in our chamber still, and our floor price is at this point, like, it's roughly 10x what we ended up minting out for, and we can get into the failed mint in a second.
Right.
And now we still have all the gun ammo, so we're in a great spot.
Yeah, no, and I think it makes sense. I think the other thing that you didn't mention, which I feel is like, I bought a Wii bump. I was like, I'm in. This is 2021 vibes, right? And they're literally every day. The problem is having a full-time job and trying to create a content company. I don't have time to DJ. I literally need to pay someone full-time to just mint my shit, right?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about being early to a chain like this is, if I, let's say, go ham on a mint that I believe in, I can lose like $50, right? It's
Yes,
not like if I fuck up, now I'm $3,000 in a hole, right? And that is just a totally different opportunity and energy that I think it brings, and it's really refreshing. So I think it's interesting that you picked it, and it makes sense for the buzz in the community and stuff. And I mean, the big risk you're taking is there's been a bajillion Says, right? So does Say last? And fortunately for you, though, if you get a big enough community, there's always figuring out how to bridge over to another chain and figuring out how to establish one.
Two things for us, Mikey. Number one, I love the degenerating part. I should have mentioned that.
Yeah.
Like, sweeping floors is so much fun, because I buy like 100 of something,
right,
and it cost me like $700. If it's like you believe in a founder or something.
Right.
The floor price is like $12. Like, give me 75 of those.
Right, exactly.
Right. You just tuck them away for a later day, and maybe it goes 2x or 5x or whatever.
Right.
So it is a lot of fun to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I forgot the other thing I was going to say. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think we're just talking about how cheap it was, but let's move on to the failed mint, because it was. I remember I had like, and I texted you, I had like 3 podcasts every week for like the last 3 weeks, but you were on my list, and I really wanted to get you on after the failed mint, just because I wanted to talk about that. But now you're actually have like resurrected a failed mint. So take us through the failed mint, and what I'm really interested in is, what do you think you did to kind of change the tides? Because this is, I think, yet another testament to your entrepreneurship skill set, that failing is part of the game, but you didn't give up, and you have figured out how to course correct a little bit after a failed mint, which 99.9% of people don't do.
Well, just to quickly touch on the last thing you said, like, I'm an NFT trader, and actually when it did fail, I hopped on Twitter Spaces immediately, and I said, I'll give everybody a refund. Like, there's just so many bad actors, right, over the years that I had seen. And like, I always vowed, I hated those people. So how could I become one of them, right? And as I told you, we're 200,000 into this. If I had to eat it, then we had to eat it. It is what it is, right? So yeah, to talk about the failed mint, I mean, we were strong going into our mint. We thought we had a sellout. Like, there was some FUD as always, because we had a mint price, which actually at that time in Say, we kind of hit a bad pocket where there was some things that had sold out early, some Say rocks, and not to bash anybody, but some things that maybe shouldn't have got some prices that they did, and people got burned, right? So then this free mint meta came out, and it's starting to turn now, which is nice. Where you looked at some of the stronger communities like WeBump and the Seance and stuff, and they were getting a lot of these whitelist opportunities, and it was the reason for them to hold that NFT, but they were all free. So, you kind of saw lower floor prices on a lot of them. And those projects also were free in the beginning, or very low mint price in the beginning, and they were successful. So people kind of were thinking, this would continue to happen. So when we launched, we had a price, right, of 49 or 55 say. And actually, we originally had a higher price. And
which is crazy, by the way, because people are spending hundreds on gas, and you're asking for $50, and people are freaking out, right?
Hey, I'm a stay lover now, so I have to embrace the mentality of
right.
It's actually great, man. Like we don't see that many rug pulls. We don't see a lot of the people coming over to scam all these millions of dollars. And when they try to, there's like a fucking army of people on Say who stand in front of them,
right,
and they call them out. Like if you try to launch a project on Say, there is an army of people that say, they dig, and they're experienced. And I actually really love that about Say. Like
right.
I'm in a group called the Say Cabal, and like there's about 200 of us in a Twitter chat. We just chat all day long, and we're just ripping shit apart. And it's great because we've seen a lot of things that probably would have minted out without those people standing in the way.
Right. I can't grind Cabal, but I would love a personal invite now that we vibed out.
Okay, we can take care of that for you. Yeah. So it's actually awesome, and it'll help preserve the longevity of the chain, because we've seen so many chains fail beforehand because they just come and suck all the liquidity out. So there's a lot of gatekeepers, which is really nice.
Right.
Yeah. So to take it back though, so we came and we wanted to charge this amount, and 49 say was what we ended up finally agreeing on. And we thought we were going to be pretty strong. So we went into we had 3 phases: OG, and then whitelist, and then public. So we had about 900 addresses on the OG phase, and we sold like 700 or so, 710 give or take NFTs, which is about what we expected. So we were feeling pretty good about that. And then we went into our whitelist phase. We had 2,900 addresses, and there was a lot of chatter, and we were excited, and the sales completely stopped. We sold, I think, 40 NFTs. And looking back at it, I think what ended up happening was that the OG addresses were added into both phases. Because what happened after the mint was we got I shouldn't say hundreds, we got tens of messages, and in Discord, hundreds of people commenting like, I couldn't mint. It said it wasn't on the list, so I just left. And it completely stopped dead. So then when we went into public, everybody's like, well, this is a failed mint.
And no one was going to mint at that point.
Right. So we actually ended up selling more mints in public than we did in the whitelist phase, which makes me now know for sure that those addresses unfortunately weren't properly uploaded. And actually, I look at some of the failed transactions during that time frame, and they were on the whitelist, so they weren't properly inputted, which is too bad. So, for me, I can't come out and say like that's the problem. Think about it. Put me at like right after the mint failed.
Right.
What are you supposed to do? Right? Like I can't come out and be like, oh, it was because of this, because everybody's like, yeah, right. Like you're a scammer, you're a rug artist, and fair. All the power to them. I would have said the same thing if I was in their shoes.
Right.
So I did a quick Twitter space, and I said, look, I've been all you guys. It's first of all, I'm thinking like it's such a small amount of money, but really, to some people that's a lot. You don't know what their situation is. So I said, I'll give you all your money back. Like I'm not $25,000 or whatever it was. It's not going to change my life. It's not worth my reputation. I'll give you all your money back. And, some other things were said. And then, we spent kind of 2 days chatting with the community. And I think a lot of people would have just said like 2 options. Do we keep going forward with the project or not? Like the project doesn't work with $25,000.
Right.
So what we did instead was I just filmed a personal video, and I said, look, this mint wasn't what was going to drive this project. We have other money. We're not going anywhere. Here's actually what the project's about for those of you who didn't understand. And if you want your money back, I'll give it to you. So I said, tomorrow we're going to go live on Pallet and just list your NFT at the price that you paid for it, whether it be 49 or 55 say, and I'll buy it from you. I said, if all of you list, I'll buy every single one of them, and then we'll just burn them, whatever, the project's over. But I said, those who believe, just stick around for a minute. I think you'll be able to get and I also said, look, I've met some people along the way, like I'll be able to get you your $40 in value back through whitelists and all of these things. So, give it a shot. And what ended up happening was in the day between when I said that and when we went to that live on Pallet was people started coming into our Discord like, we like this. Like this was great. And as it kind of got closer and closer to going live on Pellet, I realized like we're probably not going to have to buy any of these because we almost had more hype during that time than we did pre-mint. So what happened was people would list at 49 and there was like 25, 30 guys trying to buy those NFTs.
That's
So
awesome.
my plan was always, of course, to kind of wait till later in the day to start sweeping them up. I never had to buy a single one.
That's awesome.
And what happened actually like relatively quickly was there was maybe only 30 or 40 people that listed them at that mint price. They all got purchased and then people started purchasing them higher.
Yeah.
And I think that first day the floor got back up to like 220 or something,
Wow.
210 before the day was even out.
Right.
And, we forgo all royalties and stuff for that day. So maybe some people were just trying to flip, but the price really drove up. So what's ended up happening here is the original Cinos are going to be greatly rewarded because I respect them so much for, putting the faith in me, and we're not leaving now. Like they scratched our back. So now it's our turn to kind of, put the proof up there. So we will always take care of those guys till those are our crew. We've got a lot of real loyal, tight people within our small community, which is nice. So there's only like 380 holders, I think, right now. So for us, that's really easy to reward. That small level
awesome,
of people.
Man. Yeah. And so what I take away from that, and I love your extra thoughts, is what you did was what a lot of founders don't do in crypto and NFT space is you were just transparent, man. You were forthcoming of what happened. You took a video, which is unheard of, and told people, hey, here's who I am. This is what we're actually about. And this is what I'm going to do to solve the problem. And not give me a gray, fluffy answer or just go silent, or what I see all the time. And props to you is you're hurt, right? And it's hard, and people just come out firing and they get angry and it fucking explodes in their face. So props to you. Any other additional thoughts on kind of how I interpreted what you did?
No, I love it. Like I don't know why, like I get off on problem solving big fucking problems. I enjoy that because you're right. Like the average person just runs away from failure. Yeah. Me and everybody that's around me in my life, like we smash that stuff head first. Like that's just tell me the problems, let's lay them out. Let's find a solution. And figure it out. Like we've got enough resources at our disposal within my network that like we'll always find a way. There's always a way. So if it's something we got to cut off, then you cut it off. But you just never tell people something that's not going to happen. Yeah. And as long as you stay true to your word, then just build some cool shit and you'll be successful.
And what blows my mind is those are pretty common principles just in life, right? To be successful. But for some odd reason, we're in the Web3 crypto space and your fucking brain goes bonkers and people don't just take the practical approach like you did. So again, props on you. I think the last question about this, and then I want to talk about just the next 6 to 12 months. Are you good on time? Another like 15 minutes?
Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, taking out the whitelist debacle, right? That actually I have obviously impacted your mints. And I'm interested in your thoughts for, let's say, potential Save founders or web NFT, Web3 NFT founders in general. What mistakes, lessons were made during that kind of failed mint process, and what would you do a little differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just connecting earlier with some of the people in Say, I think we almost came in a little arrogant, right? Like we've got this awesome project and everything on Say right now is kind of just simplistic. And that was probably a fault. So, you really have to take the time to marinate what you're doing. And to be honest, if people listen to this podcast that are current Say holders, or Cino holders, they'll probably learn some shit that they didn't even know about our project. Like I bet you half the people that hold it have never even read our white paper, right? So, and that's common in crypto. So, the first things you need to do is connect with the other people that are in the community. Right. And when you start to roll out the project, unless it's like some massively hyped thing that you've already built a lot of utility for, similar to us, and you're able to kind of get to, somebody like Llama who, if he likes you, he gets on your side, you're set. Yeah. You got to really be in there. You should be buying other projects. You should be connecting with those people, and you need to be genuine. So if you believe in what you're doing, like, what's the rush?
Right.
I tell this to my community all the time because they're so accustomed to like this instant gratification, right? They want tweets and they want the price to go up tomorrow morning, and I'm like, guys, just relax.
Right.
Like let this take a little bit of time. It doesn't need to be a tweet every day that's like,
Yeah.
What's coming. Wait till you see what's coming next or whatever. Like, or this meeting I just had. I think that's so negative. And those look back at 99% of those projects, they're worthless
gone.
and the founders are
Right.
gone. So just be genuine for sure.
Yeah, dude. Dude, great advice. That's again going to make a fantastic clip. I already got an idea to make your community happy about how we can do a little marketing with this little ditty. We'll talk about that after. Um, Fantastic insight, dude. Conversation's been great. Next 6 to 12 months, always preface this with the advice of you were forthcoming and gave a lot of information, but I've also seen time and time again founders get burned by sharing too much information. So next 6 to 12 months, would you think you feel good? I mean, listen, since we've vibed out and we're going to be lifelong friends and we're going to be cheering on the Super Bowl and betting together,
Yeah, of course.
maybe one piece of alpha. But totally up to you. Would love to hear what the future holds, man.
No, I don't mind sharing lots of stuff. Like the things that we keep private are just, a lot of the technology that we built and a lot of the partnerships that we already have brewing in the back,
Right.
and things like that. But like the project itself is nothing's changing, right? Like our end game is a casino, and in the middle is a token, and and right now we're an NFT project that is creating players for a social casino. We've invested and built out all the technology for a fully functioning social casino. That's already done. So that's the first phase, right? Is that casino goes live. And then we're currently in a lot of conversations with, VCs and capital raisers that want to invest in the token. That is, those things start to finish up and we finalize a funding round for the token. And then very shortly after, the casino goes live, which again is kind of like the overlord that keeps the whole ecosystem funded.
Right.
People are going to gamble on somewhere online. If we can, again, just capture a small percentage of that market, like we don't need a lot to make this fun and cool. Like for us, this isn't really about making money. We're all quite successful. People who've my partners in this, it's about, having fun. Like, this is fun for me.
I love it, man. Yeah, no, that's great insight. I do have one last question, which is the regulatory nightmare, right? For instance, I'm in California. I can't sports bets online. What does that all look like? I'm assuming you had to get licensing. It's just it's a shit show and a clusterfuck when it comes to that. So I would love to just get insight on how you're thinking about it, what you had to do, and all of that.
Well, so for our social casino, right? Like for the first piece, you actually don't need a license.
Right.
But the problem we came across, so again, we thought this is one of those things we learned along the way. We figured out that you may not need a license. You probably maybe crossing a little line you shouldn't, but you'd probably be able to get away with it. But the studios will not work with you. So like if you want to have decent content on your casino, the first question they ask you is like, where's your license? So for us, that was the first hurdle that we had to cross. Was like, okay, well, we need to either get our own license or partner with somebody that has one that wants to work with us, which is what we're doing, and so that we can even approach these studios. So that's what took us a long time to kind of do. So, but to answer your next question, like playing in so I'm not 1,000% positive, but I'm very certain that you will be able to play in the social casino no matter where you live in the world,
right?
Because it's actually considered it's just like running a pool at your work, right? You may have like a hockey pool at your work. It's actually the same thing. It's a community. It's closed gated, and there's no direct correlation for capital.
I can play like Zynga stuff like for funny money. What I can't do, and I can even play fantasy sports in California. What I can't do is sports bet online.
Correct. But if you look at like what Stake has done with stake.com, where it's a sweepstakes, there's actually some, it's kind of a weird law with gambling, where to me, it's just gambling. And actually, if you look at it, it really truly is like you're just buying a different token, and in return you get another token that's the real money.
Right.
It's just such a silly workaround. So, you would assume they would just either close that loophole or just legalize gambling. Right. But, they're kind of going with it the way that they are. So anything that you see in any other gambling site for a real money casino will be the same laws.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, awesome. Well, dude, I'm blown away. I knew we were gonna have a conversation, but well exceeded my expectations. This is what I like to do at the end. I actually lied. I have one more question. It's a softball. Um, I will say my closing comments and we'll call it a day, unless you have anything else that you want to add to the future of the project before we go there.
No, I mean, I never like to pressure anybody into anything. I don't try to be salesman. This is what we're doing.
Right.
And I think it's cool. Like, come along, we're building, we're having fun. And I think we got, a cool project here. There's a lot of cool people in our community that are, that really enjoy what we're doing and they're along for the long term.
Yeah.
So if you're not looking for some like cool art project that's just community driven,
Yeah.
come and hang
Awesome.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so my second question, final question is, you have been a part of probably hundreds, listened to thousands of spaces, seen a lot of media content in the crypto Web3 space over time. How do you think your time on Midlife Crisis podcast compares to others? Be brutally honest. Give me feedback. I'm really interested in getting better and hear what you have to say.
I'm the worst person to ask that. I've probably listened to 5 Twitter spaces in my life. And
well, all right, take that back. How did your experience go on the Midlife Crisis?
You made it, as I said, you did a very good job of controlling the pace, which I think when you're leading any sort of conversation or interview is very difficult. Yeah. Especially for me, the guy who's like, I'm always trying to kind of think about what the other person is thinking and trying to shape the conversation in that direction. You did a really good job of just making, taking the time that, as much time as we've had here today last, but also just making it natural and comfortable and, not too difficult.
Thanks, man. That is a lesson. Our mission statement, we took months bringing back the lost art of genuine human connection. As we get more connected and literally we're talking to each other in VR every day, this is critically important. And it's amazing to me that younger people that I talk to can't hold like a meaningful, long conversation. And I think it's critically important. That's really what drives me. And thank you again for sharing your story, because I actually think I'm the winner out of all this, because I talk to people like yourself and multiple different people from all walks of life, and I just learn, man, and I gain knowledge for every one of these conversations. I pick up new tidbits, and getting into my comments, one brother from another mother, we're gonna be friends hopefully for a long time. I can't wait to hop back into the Discord, and hopefully we can work together in the future, create more content. But 2, just being like you said, I could tell at first like you're kind of rushing through it, but then we took a deep breath, and you got comfortable and you shared intimate details about your life, and that's probably one of the most difficult things that somebody can do. So I really appreciate that as well. I think you're incredibly sharp. I think the fact that you have had success in the past is going to really help you out now. And I really, really admire how you handled the failed mins, taking the risk on say, and just your behavior after. I saw that too. I actually hopped in your space right after the failed mint and listened to you a little bit. And I think your personality, your cadence, your calmness, and all of that transpired. Props to you, man. So I think you're a great dude. Fantastic conversation. I really look forward to continuing to work together. So thank you, man.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. And with that being said, people, the Mikey G / Midlife Crisis podcast is calling it a day. Incredible conversation. Look for content from this podcast being cut up on our socials. We love you all. Mikey G and our boy Benny are out.